started.
Hi, my name is Mackenzie Young, and I'm the president of Accounting Society at Westchester University. Welcome everyone who is attendance. Now we will hear opening remarks from Dean Evan Leach.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie. It's my pleasure to welcome everybody here to our Beta Alpha Psi speaker event. There, I got it out. We are really fortunate tonight to have Kimberly Ellison-Taylor to join us, and we are proud to be hosting this event. My only regret is that we're not in person, but until that happens, it's great to be with everybody virtually. Before we get started with the event, I want to do a couple of quick shout outs of appreciation. First, to our accounting alumni who are out there, and we really appreciate all of the support we receive from our alumni. Second, a shout out to the planning committee for tonight's event. An event like this has a lot of moving parts, and it took a lot of work to pull this together, and we really appreciate everybody's effort to that. A special acknowledgement and shout out to Amber Young, the president of Beta Alpha Psi. We really appreciate all of your hard work, and again, your dedication really makes events like this possible. Also, I want to acknowledge our chair of accounting, Dr. Lori Fuller, who has worked tirelessly in the department with the faculty and with students to help make the accounting program what it is. Excellent. So I hope everybody enjoys this event. And again, I really look forward to when we can all be here in person. So now I just want to turn it over to Wesley Barnes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Wesley Barnes, and I am the current president of the National Association of Black Accountants on Westchester's campus. I would like to take a brief moment to thank all of the Beta Alpha Psi and NABA chapters in attendance, as well as firm representatives, Westchester alumni, students, and faculty and special guests. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amber Young, and I am the president of Westchester University's chapter of Beta Alpha Psi. So a couple of notes for tonight. Please fill out the survey that is in the chat. It should have also popped up on your computers whenever you signed in to Zoom tonight, and then also it should pop up after. However, I will be sending the link again for those of you that have just joined recently and may have missed the link. Also, you may submit questions at any time during the presentation. However, we are waiting to do the questions and answer them at the end of the presentation. Dr. Ohlers, who is the advisor of Westchester's chapter Beta Alpha Psi, and I will be moderating the questions. Now, it is my pleasure to share Kimberly Ellison-Taylor's biography with you all. Kimberly is the Chief Executive Officer of KET Solutions, LLC, a consulting firm focused on business growth, innovation, strategy, transformation, and inclusive leadership. Kimberly is a sought-after keynote speaker and has received many awards and recognitions for her expertise and leadership. For almost 17 years, Kimberly served in global leadership roles for Oracle Corporation. She advised C-suite executives on cloud solutions that innovate and transform business. Kimberly is also an adjunct professor for Carnegie Mellon University's Chief Information Officer Certificate Program, teaching emerging technologies and innovation. Other professional achievements include tenure at Prince George's County Government, KPMG, Motorola, and NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. Kimberly has an undergraduate degree in Information Systems from University of Maryland, Baltimore County, an MBA from Loyola University, an accounting certificate from Baltimore County Community College, and a Master of Science from Carnegie Mellon University in Information Technology Management, as well as a Chief Information Officer certificate. She is a certified public accountant, certified global management accountant, and certified information systems auditor. Kimberly has volunteered in the profession for over 20 years, including leadership positions as chairman of the American Institute of CPAs, chairman of the Association of Certified Professional Accountants, and chairman of the Maryland Association of CPAs. Kimberly is also the chair-elect for the AICPA's National Commission on Diversity and Inclusion and is also the incoming president-elect for Beta Alpha Psi. Kimberly is also the chairman of the Maryland Association of CPAs Education Foundation. She is also a life member of Sigma Gamma Rho and also a lifetime member of National Association of Black Accountants. Once again, thank you all for attending tonight's presentation. I am honored to now welcome Kimberly Ellison-Taylor for tonight's presentation.
Amber, I just cannot thank you enough. And while someone is giving me permission to share my slides, I just want to say that this is always a great opportunity for me to get to speak with my future bosses. And just so you know, that's how I refer to you, because I think you are absolutely 100% the future managing partners, future managing directors, future deans, future accounting department heads, future executive directors, future senior vice presidents, future chief financial officers, the chief information officers, the chief executive officers. You're all here. We've been waiting for you. We're so excited in general when we think about the amazing pipeline of leaders that we have in our profession. And so when Madam President Amber called me, and well, I should say she actually inboxed me on LinkedIn. So she was absolutely on her game, absolutely working on your behalf. And I know she's in collaboration with all of the amazing leaders that I heard on the call when we first started. So let's talk about the topic we're going to talk about tonight. And that is going to be around what you can expect. What is happening in the accounting profession? We've been keeping it for you, but we're hoping that we're leaving it in a great place so that when you take your position, you are able to just snap right into place and start moving forward. So let's talk about the accounting profession. I wish this could have been the image that you would have been facing. If you're graduating in the next couple of weeks, or you're graduating next year, or even in December, who's hoping that this would have been what you experienced? This would have been a great internship environment if you did an internship in 2020. You would have shown up, you would have been on site, you would have met a dozen people, it would have been open office space, you would have gotten foosball, some checkers, there's chess. Oh, there's amazing things that are happening in the offices today. Not like when I was coming through when in my career, I'll tell you that. But this is just a graphical illustration of what it would have been like. You would have met a lot of people in orientation, and I would dare say lifelong friends that you would have carried through for the remainder of your careers. But instead, this is what you kind of experienced. And so if you were anticipating this kind of environment where it was rocky waters, uncertainty, unpredictability, unfortunately, people who are not here with us anymore, businesses that closed, it's just an unprecedented time. And I will tell you that, yes, it probably happened a couple of times before, bits and pieces and parts, but not as long as any of us can remember would it have been as traumatic and as global and as consistent as it was in 2020 and still into a lot of what is 2021. So we're talking about people working from home, people going to college from home, contactless everything, supply chains that really weren't working initially. We could not find toiletry items anywhere. We could barely get food. They were rationing it out. That's not what we were thinking that your senior year or your junior year was going to be like, or if you were going to college. That wasn't what we were thinking was going to happen. And yes, if you had little brothers and little sisters, I'm sure you got pressed into helping tutor with that new math that goodness knows that people who are in my generation, we didn't do it the same way that they're learning it now. So we needed you to help us through that process. We basically did not anticipate that it was going to be this remote environment, because your internships basically became this connected technology network of individuals that you've seen on Zoom, Teams, Meeting, Place, on 24. I now know more web conferencing softwares than I've ever known or thought existed in my entire life. And now through technology, you were able to, in many cases, continue with your internships, and you were able to meet people. You were able to support audits. You were doing taxes. You were doing advisory services. You were doing your classwork, and you were getting it done in a remote environment. Now, I will tell you a little inside baseball about the environment that you're stepping into. Well, I'm Generation X, so let me just say that first of all. And I would have to say, we probably wouldn't have pressed this envelope as much as, unfortunately, this environment has. We've always known that much of the work that we do could be done remotely. We absolutely knew that. We couldn't convince some of our colleagues that you didn't necessarily need to see people to know that they were working. Guess what? Today's environment proved that it could be done. And so all of the ideas that we said would never work, and I'm saying we very generously, we've seen them work. It's still not, in my estimation, the best environment, because maybe the best environment is a hybrid. Maybe the best environment is, yes, you don't have to be in traffic. Yes, you can get more work done at home, but there's something to be said about the energy of working with other people. And just for me personally, I think there's the best of both worlds that we could actually thrive in. And I'm excited about this part because it moved us forward. At least I said 3 years. Some colleagues said 5 years as it relates to the technology adoption and adaptation that we're seeing in the marketplace. The other thing that I would say is that you're coming into an amazing profession. When the tax season was extended, there were many people who wondered what in the world were they going to do. Fortunately, along with all of the heroes who were in the health profession, all of the heroes who were helping us be safe physically, law enforcement, we had CPAs who were continuing to do their jobs and various responsibilities from home. Some of our colleagues actually even went into the office place. They were trying to figure out how they could keep the economy going. CPAs in particular speak the language of business. And so I'm always excited to work with colleagues across the United States and around the world, and then just to receive the recognition that maybe we're not saving lives. So definitely don't want to imply that, but we did a good job and we did the part that we could, and we were considered essential workers. And so just so you know, the profession that you're coming into is needed, it's necessary, and there will always be opportunities to thrive and work. But we're also going to have to make some lemonade, because there were some other things as it relates to businesses closing, bankruptcies, that were also a consequence of this environment. And so I've seen people, after we all grieved, everyone grieved in their own way, whether you binge watched on television, whether you sat and just ate as much ice cream as you could, or whether you just cried. Maybe you just needed a mental health break. And that's okay, 100%. I was delighted to see the grace and the patience that was being given, the education and awareness around mental health and awareness, because there were plenty of us who were not okay. And we were checking on them. People were checking, hopefully, on you. And if you're listening to me now, you need someone to check on you, please let the leadership on this call know. We don't want anyone to feel isolated or to feel alone, because it is a tough environment. Because if you feel isolated and alone, to be honest, it's really tough to see how you're going to make lemonade or how you're going to have ice water with lemon slices in this particular case. But we've needed leadership. And that's the leadership that I was just referencing, where you're reaching out to colleagues, you're reaching out to your fellow classmates, you're asking them how they're doing. Many of you are identifying companies that you want to work for. Their leadership at all of those various accounting firms. And I should just say that although I think the superhighway path is through public accounting to the profession, I also recognize and respect that there are many colleagues who are in business and industry, they're in government, they're in not-for-profit, they're in education, and they're also consultants. That's also what I love about our profession, because you can be in accounting, finance, and a CPA, all of those credentials or all of those disciplines, and still support other industries. And I would say like oil and gas, manufacturing, healthcare, retail, consumer packaged goods. I mean, just think about the intersections of how you can actually implement your learning and the great education system that you're taking a part of or taking advantage of while you're in school. Amazing opportunities, but it does require leadership. And I say that because if something bad could have happened, I think it did happen. So I will tell you from my vantage point as a past chairman of the American Institute of CPAs, I was watching very closely. I was watching what was happening in the world. I'm really delighted that you had the American Institute of CPAs. You also had the Pennsylvania Institute of Certified Public Accountants on the job. If you are not a student member of the Pennsylvania Institute of Certified Public Accountants, please do find out how you become a member so you can take advantage of resources, and you can also take advantage of the opportunities for scholarships and the other opportunities that might be out there. But back to this. So what happened? Well, if you were watching like I was, then you saw natural disasters, and some man-made, happening at a record clip. I just could not believe how much was really happening. And I don't know if I knew as much about geography, but I will tell you, to myself, I was thinking there can't be another tree in California or in Oregon. And my prayers went out to all of the families and all of the people who were impacted. And it was just a really tough environment. Then we also understood that we were in a recession. And that was really tough for businesses, for people hiring in some instances, people not doing the jobs that they thought they were going to get because the businesses couldn't offer it to them. Not really as clear an environment as we would have liked, but that's why being in the accounting profession is so great, because you get the opportunity through any number of credentials, any number of pathways to help the public interest and to help members, your fellow colleagues, classmates, fellow alum get through these tough times. And so then we had the pandemic, which I just spoke about. And then to make matters like even worse on top of worse on top of worse, we needed to have this conversation. It was overdue about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We realized that there were colleagues, classmates, and members of the public, those we'll never know, who have been suffering in silence across a wide spectrum of diversity, by age, by race, ethnicity, religion, ability, communication style, geography, their first generation. I mean, it's so many different inclusion characteristics that we weren't always paying attention to. And then we certainly didn't realize, I think, to the degree and level that our African-American colleagues were suffering and dying at the hands of interactions that should have never happened. The people who should have been keeping us the most safe were the ones who were the most threatening. And I don't think, when I think about colleagues and I think about what they were seeing and what they were thinking, I had colleagues who were quite frankly surprised because they did not realize that for years, people who are African Americans like me were giving their kids and their students, young adults like you, the talk. And the talk is all the things that you have to do in order to be safe when you leave your home and when you're on your way coming back. Who knew that 2020 was going to be all of those different things together? And so when we talk about what you're stepping into, I want you to be prepared. So no, I'm not sugarcoating it for you. You're adults. You can handle it. And I need you to handle it because we're counting on you to help us think and strategize, and in some cases, disrupt our way through this crisis that we're in. And so when I think about all of the other things we were keeping an eye on, regulatory complexity, oh, that's definitely always going to be around. And I would suspect that in the aftermath of a COVID environment, we're going to have more regulations. And I would also say there are any number of financial challenges worldwide. This list was the list before COVID. This is what we were saying in 2019. So imagine what the financial challenges worldwide might be today. Imagine if you are a financial planner and you're doing investments and you're taking care of people's portfolios and they have interest in other countries around the world. This isn't just a United States concern. It is a global concern because as we speak the language of business and we help the capital markets, we also have a responsibility to ensure that Mr. and Mrs. Main Street investor has the information they need to make effective decisions about their finances. And so that's why it's important. We start talking about the demographics. We've got a lot of people, a lot of generations in the work environment. So we've got the traditionalists that were born before 1944. We've got the baby boomers between 1944 and 1964. We've got Gen X like me, born between 1965 and let's just keep the numbers round. I'll say 1979. Millennials born between 1980 and let's say 1996, 97. We have our Generation Z born between 1997 and 98 up to 2010. And then in 2010, we now have our Alpha generation. So we've got a lot of people working, although the Alpha generation isn't here yet, but they're next on deck. And so what people expect, frictionless, omni-channel experiences that are secure and reliable and predictive is what I would say people expect to varying degrees. There are people and our colleagues who still want the face-to-face interaction. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think as we start thinking about strategy and how we engage with our clients and customers and business partners, it's also going to be important to think about people have multiple styles that they will use, and they want them all to tell the same story. And I will tell you that many organizations are actively working on how they can increase their penetration in the marketplace, their amount of mind share and market share that they have in the marketplace. And they definitely want to think of ways that they will have stickier relationships. And so then we were talking about consumer empowerment. And the good news is that there's technology and everything's on the internet. The bad news, depending on what company you might be in, is that we have everything on the internet, we have technology, and guess what? Your clients can fact check you in real time. There is no hoarding of data and of information. It's legacy and it's outdated from the moment it goes out into the world. And so that means that the commitment to lifelong learning that in the profession that we always talk about is even more important because you have to be in a place where your clients and customers and business partners consider you a trusted advisor. You're not a trusted advisor if your clients and customers know more about something than you do, because you've got to stay at least out in front. So that means every day you should be thinking in the future, not now, because you should be focusing on exams and school. But I think about what I need to know every single day. And so you'll understand that as you proceed through your careers even more. And so when we talk about disruption, I have no doubt, have heard all the case studies about Uber and also the taxi cab industry, Airbnb, the hotel industry. You've been following or you heard about Kodak, Blockbuster, now that Netflix is now competing with maybe major movie houses. Netflix was the CDs, the DVDs that we were getting through the mail. And look at them today. Look at Amazon today. We thought of Amazon as simply an e-reader company. And now look at them in e-commerce. And we're not even talking about their business that they have in the cloud space. What a company is today does not mean that they're going to be that way going forward in the future. When Facebook or LinkedIn started, who knew that they were going to be such major communication platforms that people use all over the world, and that there are hundreds of billions of people connected on Facebook and connected on LinkedIn? Who knew that? The other thing I would say is, as an example, Apple, because a lot of people use Apple. I'm sure you may know this also, but I remember in the early 2000s when we weren't even sure if Apple was going to be around. Apple was primarily used for graphic artists. It was not a part of the bring your own device strategy that actively you see more and more, where people want to bring their Macs to work. We didn't see that. So I say that to say, the next billion-dollar idea could be in your head. Don't discount the energy, the new ways of looking at something, the fresh perspective that you offer and bring. Because I'm sure for all of those companies I just mentioned, I'm sure, I have no doubt that someone was trying to talk them out of it. And someone said, are you sure you really want to do this? And look at it today, where Apple has $1 trillion market cap. It's unbelievable, but exciting for them. And then when we start talking about workforce changes, we were talking about workforce changes before we were talking about the future of work. The future of work wasn't the catchy title that you hear about today. It was, okay, let's talk about how people like to engage. And then we started talking about the gig economy and talking about people who really want to use a 1099 as their employment mechanism, because they don't really want to work for anyone. They want to be contract team members, and they decide what their schedules are. They decide what their statement of work might be. And they are working on their own schedule, their own pace, location independent, wherever they want to be. And we were starting to see more and more of that. And then with great power comes great responsibility, technology and cyber. And so we're starting to see a lot more in the cyberspace. And I will tell you what's interesting is that back when I was going to school, it was a lot more siloed than it is today, where you had accounting, then you had technology, and they were kind of not talking to each other at all. In today's environment, the CFOs and the partners, regardless of whether you're in auditing, tax, or advisory services, or you're in a nonprofit, or if you're in government, you have to be concerned about confidentiality, making sure that you don't have breaches of data. So cyber is a pretty big deal. And then, of course, the geopolitical instability that is happening around the world, it does impact our financial interests. So we were tracking these things beforehand. Before 2020 happened, we were already thinking about the public interest in everything that we do. It's always about the public interest. It's always about what we can do to help. And so part of that, I think, is understanding that there is a technology implication that we should all embrace. And yes, I know that you're maybe business, marketing, finance, and accounting majors, maybe not technology, but I'm going to ask that as you think about, other areas that you might want to pursue, that you consider analytics, you might want to consider supply chain, but I will definitely tell you that cyber security or any of these emerging technologies are also critical areas that will complement the finance and business and accounting background that you are developing in your school studies. And so let's talk about what that means. And if you're looking at my picture and you're saying, Kimberly, that's kind of disturbing, as one of our colleagues said, I will say it is my notion that we should not be afraid of technology. We should embrace it, and we should use it as a complement to help us in our day-to-day work, that we should not be afraid of leveraging technology. We should instead use it in a way that frees us up to do all the other things that we wish we had time to do. And so I see it as a friendly assist to complement and not as a replacement of me. But that also means that I need to stay ahead of the skill sets that are needed in the marketplace. I can't just wait until it happens. I need to absolutely have a digital mindset. And it's so interesting because today I might walk into a store, and as soon as I see a bunch of manual stuff, my mind immediately starts to think, wow, they could have used some automation. That process could have easily been automated. I go into a restaurant and I'm thinking, oh, they could have automated this. They could have done it that way. They could have did it this way. And then that would free up the time of the person who is providing the service, because they might be able to talk more. They might be able to upsell more. They might be able to think about the dessert options and tell us what the desserts are, and just develop a friendly relationship that keeps people coming back again and again. And so that digital mindset, you really can't turn it off. Once you start thinking about how you can have better process efficiency and effectiveness, and how you can leverage technology in order to help you do it, you'll start thinking about it from a risk management perspective. You'll start thinking about it from a strategy perspective. You'll start thinking about it from a financial perspective. You'll think about it in every aspect of your life, because you have fully embraced this digital mindset. And I think that that is really important. Now, this is your homework for the summer, because some of you are still taking classes. But I would say for those of you who are thinking about your careers and how you can differentiate, when you step into your internships or you have full-time offers, you will have all of the responsibilities that they hired you to do. But I will tell you, as you look and think about what the future might hold after you get your credentials, I want to say that too, because you're going to be studying probably for 18 months, or you might be able to finish it really, quickly. But this is something in the back of your mind you really need to think about. Artificial intelligence, think about how humans interface with AI, machine learning and blockchain, the Internet of Things. And I would love to have a deeper conversation one day about what each one of those does and how they interface and they work and they support the whole accounting environment, because there's a lot more that we can do. Technology is changing our reality. It absolutely is. And so for many of you, you won't remember those VHS tapes. You won't remember the phone booths, but many of us do. And so when you go into the environment and you're interfacing with colleagues that are older than you, one of the things I did, and I think this would still work, I got people to talk about me and say great things about me when I wasn't in the room. And the reason, one of the reasons I think, is because I was always willing to listen and learn. I was always willing, although they were doing things that I thought to myself, I have taken a step into the Stone Age when I stepped into this door. I'm going to have to admit it, I did, but I didn't say that. I didn't reflect that. I listened, I paid attention, I asked why. I just needed to understand the historical context. It's difficult to come in and question stuff about why they do this and why they do that until you fully have an understanding of why it was done in the first place. And that's the historical context that I think is so important, so that when you see opportunities to do any of these different technologies, then you have the credibility to persuade. You have the credibility to offer suggestions and alternatives on how you do certain things. Without that, you just would not have it, because you just, in their minds, they're going to say, you just got here. How could you possibly know why we did it this way? Ideas are always 100% welcome, but there's always an appropriate time and an appropriate place. And somehow I managed to figure that out. And then figuring that out, that made me very valuable to the people I reported to, because I took the time to understand the as is so that I could help develop to be processes that I think were value added, results driven, and actually achieve the mission, purpose, and values of the organization. Can't go wrong when you think about it that way. Now, from a technology perspective, this is part of the reason I say it's our homework, because imagine if you are the tax accountant, or you're the auditor showing up, or you're in advisory services, and this could be any one of your clients. When you're going in and you're thinking about risk, or you're thinking about suggestions for new strategies or things that they can do, you've got to be up to speed on these new ways of operating. There are absolutely any number of competitive threats that fully aren't even baked. There are people thinking about ideas. They're probably ready to go on Shark Tank for all we know with their new ideas. And think about the things that are on the slide that hopefully get you thinking about the financial and accounting implications. That's why we have to pay attention, because if the world is going to become more technology centric, then we have to as well, so that we fully understand the business challenges, the disruption opportunities, the revenue opportunities, the new products, goods, and services that we can actually help grow. We've got to be one step ahead, and that means leveraging technology in different ways. Now, I found this slide to be extremely interesting. Why? Because it's so appropriate. By 2027, 75% of companies currently in the S&P 500 might no longer be there. Now, you know what's interesting is that quote was from InnoSight in 2016. And yet today, that statement couldn't be more true. And it's probably not true completely for all of the reasons, but back then the quote was about technology use and whether or not companies were going to be around in the 2027 timeframe, just 10 years away. And so it's easy to see where companies might not be around if they are not adapting to the trends. And so I'll give you an example. So on the Forbes particular article that says 16 pandemic-driven tech trends that are here to stay, think about how those impact your life on a day-to-day basis. E-commerce, remote work first, low code, tech-driven home fitness products, cashless and online purchases, telehealth diagnoses. If you were sick today, chances are you wouldn't go into the doctor. I mean, when my son needed to talk to his pediatrician, we basically called him on the phone and we talked to him about the symptoms, and it was just basically a cold. But of course, we didn't know that. We weren't taking any chances. And so then think through the rest of those. Video conferencing, the accelerated adoption of automation. Now, if I were thinking about how I was going to make my mark and how I was going to ensure that I added value, I'm results driven, outcome driven, I would look at a couple of those trends. And when you show up in the back of your mind, think about how you can impact positively those different trends and how you can make a difference in the environment that you're in. On the other side, we actually saw the ingenuity and innovation of companies that were doing things they probably thought they would never do. And so whether you're launching new business models, you're redeploying your workforce in a new way, you're developing new products, you're shifting operations. I mean, we saw a lot of manufacturing organizations actually stopping their manufacturing line to manufacture ventilators or other medical devices and tools that were needed during the pandemic environment. So we know that it's possible. The amount of collaboration, coordination, and cooperation, I think, was absolutely amazing, because this was a humanitarian issue And many of these corporations knew or felt an obligation, I should say, to step in and help. So the next part of this presentation, I want to talk about the client side, because I believe, again, helping you strategize your career, think about where you can add value, things that you should consider potentially, but it's got to be what works for you. Always think about what works for you. I think about it from the client's view, because even if you're in tax, or if you're in auditing, or you're in advisory services, or you're going into a different field, you're in management accounting, you're going into the CFO's office, there's still going to be this concept of who's the end user customer. And when you think about what the end user customer is, who they are, then you can think about how you can add, again, more value, sticky, to be a trusted steward, to be the person that they call when they have a question. That's an amazing place to be. And so I will tell you that my former employer, Oracle, and the AICPA did a collaboration where Oracle paid for the research that was done by AICPA and the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. They actually did a survey of 700 finance leaders in 14 countries. And they basically were trying to figure out, why were some companies more successful than others? And it came down to a couple of different areas that I will talk about. But it was interesting to note that only 10% of the CFOs said that their finance team had the skills needed to support the organization's digital ambitions. So you are entering and walking into an environment where upskilling, talking about skill sets and digital capabilities are definitely on the CEO's dashboard. And so to the extent that you have those skill sets, or you're thinking about it in advance, will put you ahead of the curve. And yes, this publication is available. The other thing that was in the document was basically asking these various organizations, higher ed, manufacturing, high tech, life sciences, healthcare, basically just asking them, are you ready? What digital age readiness techniques and tips would you recommend? So here is a checklist of things just to keep in the back of your mind, but the value proposition always going to be like top of mind. It's at the organizational level, but it's also at the individual level. Make sure you have your own inherent value proposition statement. Why would someone hire you? Why would you be the best person for the role or the job opportunity? And then, of course, it went processes, went relationships and resources, the cost, the revenues, and then the structure. So in asking these questions, they were able in the survey to really get down to the nitty gritty of what were the three things in particular that made a company more successful than others. And if they were leveraging technology, they were considered an agile finance organization. If they weren't, then they were considered non-agile, but the ones that were using technology actually showed greater revenue, greater profitability. That's kind of a good thing to know if you were going to be the auditor, tax, advisor, and also walking in, maybe doing some advisory services, that the companies that you're working with care in particular, or should be thinking about three main things: operational excellence, digital intelligence, and business influence. And operational excellence is talking about automation, getting rid of processes that no longer work, simplifying them, streamlining them, automating them, and then, of course, standardizing them across the organization. And those steps vary depending on where people are on their journeys. And then, of course, digital intelligence, once you do the operational excellence, becomes a lot easier, because then you have data that is that much more easier to reconcile, to get insights from, and to help, I would say, improve the decision-making at an operational level. And when you can do those two things, then you foster and promote greater trust with the operational line users, the people who are in the field. They trust you, you know the business, you have financial acumen, you understand what they're trying to do. You're not only there to talk about expense control, you're there to talk about how they can gain competitive market share. And that's kind of some things to just think in the back of your mind, because we're always saying leaders look around corners. And I found a visual that really demonstrated that look around corners, because it's hard. When you're a leader, some of this is data driven, but it's gut informed. Sometimes you're just doing the best you can with the data that you have. And especially in an environment where it's unpredictable, it's uncertain. We did every R we could. We talked about recovery, reflection, reimagine, reinvent, reform, every single R that you can imagine. So leaders of organizations are under pressure to really, really, really achieve these three things. And I think if I were going to focus on three things, this would probably be absolutely part of it, with people falling under operational excellence. Because the competitors aren't just in Pennsylvania. The competitors aren't in West Virginia. The competitors aren't in Maryland. The competitors are literally around the world, because technology enables people who would take 2 days to get to you can now get to you in the span of just a click of a button. And we are now on a Zoom and we're talking. And I dare say that we one day will have holographic images, and you will be in a classroom and everyone will be in various places and there'll just be a hologram of you. That absolutely, I think, is possible. I know the technology exists. It's just not pervasively cost effective today. But one day I expect that we will see that. From an analytics use case perspective, I also think that 5G is going to help us in a lot of different ways. And it's going to, help people think of new ideas. What about this? What about that? I think that there are so many different individuals, leaders, colleagues. When I speak with them, they are talking about analytics. There were any number of scary questions when I was a CIO before I came to Oracle. What did you know? And when did you know it? But you know what the scariest question is? Why didn't you know it? Analytics is totally an area that I think is an amazing overlay to any career path. The understanding of how to get insight from data, to analyze it, to assess it, to provide reporting, to bring numbers to life so that it's just not numbers on a page. It's the so what, the now what. You can tell me a story about what we need to do and be a storyteller. And those are the skill sets that in today's environment, that's what they're talking about on a steadily, readily basis. And you know what's interesting? Because many of us, depending on where you grew up in your career, we're like, well, the numbers are the numbers. Here's the report. But no, we want to know, what does that mean? Where can we improve? Make some recommendations for cost efficiency. It's not just enough to put the numbers together. We now need you to have success skills of being charismatic, of being personable, to work on your public speaking and your confidence, because you've got to tap into your storytelling skills, because there are so many different analytic use cases. This is only a snapshot of them. And I would say it is a critical skill set and capability and competence, especially as you move up in your career and you become increasingly have more and more people under your purview. So you definitely want to do this. And we can definitely at some length talk about this more. But now I gave you all the backdrop of what's happening in the client environments that you might be going in, what they are thinking about, what they are considering. And now this part of the presentation is going to be around what in particular AICPA and maybe even the Pennsylvania Institute of CPAs are considering and thinking about as well. So it's services, talent, and reputation and influence. So let's talk about services. So during the pandemic, when you are among, top leaders, and there are any number of organizations, so I don't want to imply that only AICPA and PICPA were the only ones. There were any number of organizations that were working together in collaboration. And so we were just really excited that everyone agreed that we really needed to continue to do a great job, be there for the public, and provide resources that help keep our economy going. And certainly we're already thinking about how to use machine learning and artificial intelligence in the audit function. So you will not do auditing the way your teachers did it, your professors did it. No, the people that I dare say that are managing partners, many of them may have done auditing a different way as well, and on the various accounting firms that you're going to go into. What we're talking about is an intelligent checklist based that allows you to pull together the methodologies, the regulations, all of the reports and forms you need based on how you answered the previous question. And so it does have machine learning baked into it, and it is AI driven. And so there's a lot of technology. There's some new methodologies that will be used. The standards will be revised, knock on wood, to accommodate these new auditing capabilities. And then we're going to be looking for more skill sets that are tech driven, skill sets that have a lot more technology acumen. And then of course, the AICPA and PICPA work together to help provide guidance to firms and also guidance to corporations. There were also any number of businesses that were calling on the profession to really provide guidance, because there are new opportunities to do additional services, different types of work. Just because we're not doing it today and you have a great idea, don't be afraid to share your idea, because it doesn't mean that we're not doing it in the future. So in this particular area, we've seen more people doing more around fraud, which is always a staple, because that's the F word we don't want to have in our environments for sure. And then we have economic damages, bankruptcy, and valuation issues that we now have a need for people who have that skill set, who have that background. And then when we start talking about tax, we also, before the pandemic, understood that you couldn't just have our tax practitioners providing tax only, when we had competitors in the marketplace that were doing those functions, and then they were throwing the taxes in as a loss leader. They were throwing the taxes in as opportunity to get more services or the goodwill of customers. And so we know that in order to maximize our relationships and provide holistic services, that we needed to not only do tax, but tax planning, estate planning, all the way around. So hopefully you'll have opportunities to do that. And during the pandemic, there were any number of opportunities when the tax season was extended. And if you had asked me, see, I'm not a betting person, I guess, or I just don't have that crystal ball. If the tax season would move to July 15th, I would have never believed it. Like, I would have said, oh, that's never going to happen. And yet it did. So again, who knows what's going to happen? But we also know that no matter if those things happen or not, skill sets are going to be important. And that's why there's a syllabus, there's the CGMA, which is the credential that I have, and it's a management accounting credential. I would encourage you to take a look at it. And lots of colleagues of mine are also pursuing it, because it is designed for individuals who are going into business and industry in particular. But I think there are some great things about it that would benefit almost anyone. So now let's talk about advisory services. So the systems and organizational control services, opportunities for engagements in cybersecurity and supply chain, which is still relatively new, information privacy, blockchain, sustainability reporting. ESG is like one of the top dashboard items as well. You're starting to hear a lot more about that. And then of course, integrated reporting. In the talent space, it's interesting because we're looking for you. We need you. We need you to stay and stay in accounting and pursue, an amazing career with unlimited opportunities and pathways. And so what's interesting is that in this particular study, IBM said the willingness to be flexible, agile, and adaptable to change was the #1 most important skill set, according to 5,600 executives in 48 countries. And so I think that's true, because we know everything we're talking about today is subject to change for tomorrow. And if it is subject to change, then we need to hone and enhance the flexibility skill set that makes us easy to adapt to whatever comes. In this particular case, I already talked about the demographics in the work environment, but I would also tell you that we have a dedicated, steadfast commitment to helping to generate our next, help our next leadership teams. And that's you. That's all of you that are on this call. You really are a part of our future leadership. And so we are going into high schools. We were trying to get AP classes, but that didn't work. So now we're teaching teachers how to teach accounting in high schools. We are actively working with professors on college campuses. We want them to be aware of the changes in the exam. That's the CPA evolution, and that's going to be coming out, where the exam is going to be changing and adding more capabilities. Those are exciting times. And so we need everyone to be on board and aware of what the journey requires. And then we have scholarships. I will tell you, this is kind of my biggest disappointment, that we do so many amazing things, but somehow we just can't figure out how to get people to apply for the scholarships. And if you're interested, it's on This Way to CPA. And if you put in AICPA and This Way to CPA, you will probably see over $1 million of different scholarship opportunities that happen throughout the year. So definitely you should be taking advantage of that. And then, of course, we have Leadership Academy types of programs. We're also working on ensuring that the profession is a place where everyone can see themselves. We don't want any group to feel disenfranchised. Everyone can see themselves at the table of opportunity. We want to make sure that women are able to advance and be in the C-suite. Because although women are at least 50% of the profession, we've got some work to do. And some of that work, and I say this to all my female future bosses on this call, this may not matter to you today, but I want you to hear my words. You can do this. I have a son, I have 2 sons and a husband. And although this is a discussion that goes equally for men and women, some of the opting out of the leadership track I see is because my female future bosses will say something like, oh, well, I wanted a family and I didn't think I could do it. The same thing I said to one of my other future bosses, please don't let anyone tell you that you cannot do it. You can. You can be, and I say this for our male future bosses, if you want to coach Little League, you can. If you want to go to the doctor's appointments, you can. I went on field trips with my kids. You can do it. Do not let the stereotypes and the myths of what you can and cannot do dictate how you define your own career. And so I hear from women more often than not, they're wondering, how in the world do you do it? How do you have work-life balance and integration? There is absolutely a way to do it. Give the firms a chance to figure out your unique situation. Men, I'm talking to you just as much as I'm talking to my women leaders on this call. Please do not let other people tell you what your career should be or how it should be. Give us a chance. Please give us a chance. And so I said that in particular about advancing women, because although we're about 50%, we're graduating about 50%, we have far too few women who actually stay to it to go to the partnership level. And I think that's because they are anticipating that they're going to have a challenge before they even get to the challenge. So it is kind of an interesting mindset there. And then, of course, for both of you, please be willing to be a mentor, because once you go through the process of actually getting hired, there will be people right behind you, classmates who need your help and guidance. And even when you get on inside the firm, there'll be people who need your help and guidance. There'll be something that you pick up like that. There'll be something that someone else doesn't pick up and you can be a mentor. But I also hope that you would consider being mentored, And considering there's a lot of feedback, a lot of changes in the profession, there's always an opportunity to learn more. Now, learn more as I turn to the slide that talks about where I grew up in the inner city of Baltimore. And the reason that I like to show this slide is because we're talking about talent, we're talking about diversity, we're talking about women, we're talking about right now social economic diversity. And as a Black woman who grew up in the inner city of Baltimore, those processes, those initiatives resonate with me very much. And when I say don't let people define who you are and what you do and what you might turn out to be, because they don't know. That hard work does pay off. That being mentored does pay off. That giving back, community service, volunteerism, getting to know other people, being bold, reaching out and asking someone to be your mentor, it does pay off. And so when you think about how I grew up, and then to think that one day I could be on the covers of magazines, it is daunting. But what I remind all of these various organizations that sometimes will say, well, Kimberly, how do you do it? And where should we go recruit? I remind them that you can get uncommon talent in uncommon places. And that although I know Baltimore is being known for the wire, don't stereotype in a way that limits the opportunities to grow and thrive. And also, in this case, get talent in a way that you probably would have never thought. So here are some things on this slide that really resonate with me. And it's kind of some of my core philosophies. The major one is to whom much is given, much is required. And so that's how I live my life. But the other stories behind each one of these, and we can definitely talk about that too at a different time. But I will say that the one about someone told me not to bite off more than I can chew. And I told them I would rather choke on greatness than nibble on mediocrity. When people say I can't, I say I can. When people say, oh my gosh, you should give up, I'm like, no, this is an opportunity for me to dig in and do it better, do it more. When people have said, Kimberly, I'm not sure, you've got 2 kids, maybe there are easier things to do. And I'm like, well, if they can do it, why not me? Why not? And so I know that core to all of that was this other one that says, surround yourself with people who have dreams, desire, and ambition. They'll help you push for and realize your own. And I think that's absolutely true. You have to be in an environment where people are going to help you, push you, and not tell you only what you want to hear, but tell you what you need to hear. Every single person needs a personal board of directors. And that includes all of those different people who serve a different role, who will say, yes, you could have done better on that test. This is not your cheerleading committee. This is not the committee that's going to say, yes, you did a great job. They're going to say, you know what? You could have got that last answer right. Now tell me what you're going to do next time so we can get the answer right. Because see, that's the kind of mentor I am. I am happy to give the attaboys, attagirls, but I'm also the mentor that would push you and say, you can do better. I know you can. And so I'm the one that would remind you that you can't have $1 million dream with a minimum wage work ethic. You've got to work hard and you've got to be willing to put the time in every single day. You can't phone it in. If they say be there at 8, you should be there at 7:45. If they say, oh, we could take a lunch and we don't know how long it's going to be, go and find the leader and see how long they're taking. I mean, there were some things that I did in my career that actually helped me move faster through my career than the other people around me. Now, would that work for you? I don't know. Only you know. I can only just tell you what worked for me and how I did it. And then you have to take that under advisement for yourself. The last area is reputation and influence. And so the AICPA, totally thinking about climate change and sustainability development. They also, which I think is so exciting, are fueling innovation by basically having 5 different organizations who are startups with new ideas that would help the profession. They're giving them a stipend, and giving them resources to people who can help answer their questions, and also helping them get on their way so that we have more innovation, more organizations and businesses that are supporting our profession. We also are very much concerned about financial literacy and making sure that you don't spend $500 for a pizza. That was the case when I was going to school. On the organizational fair day, there would be credit card companies that would show up and they say, oh, it's free, you get this free t-shirt. And then you end up in hundreds of dollars in debt, or not understanding what the ramifications might be of any of the loans you might take. Now, you got to do it, you got to do it. Absolutely, it's an investment in you. You should do whatever you need to do in order for you to be safe, happy, whole, and financially responsible. But if you don't need to do it, then there could be some other alternatives, like working on those scholarships that maybe could be an option for you. But in any event, we want to make sure that people have the information they need to make decisions that are appropriate for them. And that's why the financial literacy program is important. But ultimately, it's about the network. It's about having colleagues who are united in mission, purpose, and values, who are united in trust, opportunity, and prosperity, who are united in helping to promote and elevate the public interest in everything that we do. And it's also about recognizing that there will be some stormy days. I wish it wasn't, but there will be. But please know that there will always be a rainbow, and that we always have to be able to see the rainbow in the clouds and in the storm, so that we can be a trusted advisor and we can provide the assistance that's so necessary and needed to enable and empower the capital markets, and also help Mr. and Mrs. Main Street investor with decisions that impact their lives. We impact lives, we change lives. And so I am delighted that you invited me to speak. Thank you, Amber, for reaching out to me. I was so excited that I promoted this on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and talked about Madam President. I'm also delighted to meet the president of NABA and also the Accounting Society. Thank you, Dean, the department chair. Thank you so much for the faculty advisor, everyone who put this program together. I think it is so important. I do not think it's easy to do at all. I know you've been on Zoom and meetings all day, no doubt, and yet you still came. Thank you. And I'm sure I'm forgetting someone, but please charge it to my head and not my heart, because I am really, truly grateful for the invitation to speak. And so I'll stop and see Dr. Peter if there are any questions for me. And thank you for your support and encouragement as well.
You're very welcome. I want to again thank you very, very much. It was so very, very informative, and really appreciate it. With that, want to encourage anybody who has any questions to put them in the chat. So if you go to the questions, please feel free to submit, and Amber and I will moderate that. While we're waiting for a couple, I will ask for you to talk for a moment about the robotics aspect a little bit, and just in a couple of moments talk about kind of some things you see as a trend where robotics might be taking over for some of the accounting profession. Absolutely.
So although we do say RPA, or robotics process automation, it's really not a robot, it's software. And it's software that automates functions like claims processing, invoice matching. It's whenever you have probably a repetitive function that is heavily manual and is going across 2 or 3 different process streams, like appointment scheduling, that's an opportunity for robotics process automation, especially if we're trying to get to an environment where 80% at least, if not more, of interactions would happen without any human interaction or intervention at all. RPA is behind the scenes providing a lot of that integration and automation of business processes. And so that's also an exciting area. It does, in some instances, impact jobs, but that's where I am looking forward to us getting higher level skill sets and being able to not do those things anymore that were manual and start looking at doing some of the things that are more high value and more interesting, probably.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, our next question is, how did you know when it was the right time to pivot in your career? You've had many, you've been in with the government, you've been in private industry, you've been in public accounting. How did you know when it was time to pivot to your next opportunity?
I think what happens is this, it's about the plan. Now, I am a person that if I had an area that I needed to work on, it was not being beholden to the plan, but I always liked to plan. Even as a kid, I was always a planner. I had 3 things that I wanted to do, and then I do those things. And I think I was stubborn and wanted to be a CPA because it was on the list and it was a part of the plan and I needed to get it done. And I think in this particular case, I left NASA to go to Motorola because it was a better career opportunity for me. I didn't want to go. I thought that because I'm so loyal, I get used to working in a certain environment. I love the people. I love the environment. It was a great, if any of you know where Goddard Space Flight Center is, great campus, but it was an opportunity at Motorola to do systems integration program management. And I was trying to give the IT path a chance when everyone kept saying, oh, you don't want to be a CPA, you're in IT, you should stick to that. And then I switched roles and I still, the feeling of wanting to be a CPA did not go away just because I switched roles. And so that's when I just dug down and went to community college and took all the classes I needed. I left Motorola because I failed the CPA exam. And that was the wake-up call, because at Motorola, they didn't really care. To be honest, it wasn't my job. I didn't need a CPA. They didn't really care one way or the other. And so I needed to be in public accounting, or at least in an environment where they would ask me, Kimberly, what's going on with the exam? Are you signed up for a review? We have an incentive if you pass the test, anything that would help motivate me. And I wasn't getting it. No harm, no fault of their own. It just wasn't the role that I was, I went into. And I left KPMG to be a CIO, because ultimately to have that kind of responsibility and to be a CIO, to bring the love of accounting and technology together, because although I was a CPA by then, I was also a technologist. The genie was out of the bottle. I'd already gone down this path of technology. And so at that point, one role in and of itself would not have helped me. I could not have been in technology only. I could not have been in finance only. After I became a CPA, the only thing that would work for me was the intersection of both. And as a CIO, I got an opportunity to feed the finance part of my spirit. And then I volunteered in the profession. That's how I worked at, during the day, I was doing this, but at night I was a CIO. I was working in the Maryland Association of CPAs at night and going to functions and working my way up so that I could get, I guess, the feeding of my spirit of being in technology and being in finance and accounting. And then I left being a CIO because I could go to Oracle and it was flexible. It was a great environment for the flexibility. I've been a work at home person, probably if I was at Oracle almost 17 years, probably for 16 and a half of those years, at least, I was a work remote person. And so it was very beneficial. I had a leader that said, yes, Kimberly, you've got a 4-month-old and a 26-month-old, and we will figure out a way for you to be able to do both. And that's why I know that if you give companies a chance, they will figure it out, because I didn't want to travel with my kids that young, and I didn't, because they work with me, they work with my schedule. And then I stayed at Oracle for a long time because I felt like a consultant more than anything. And I left Oracle only because of a better opportunity. I am now on 3 boards, and being on those boards and also doing community service and also being a consultant, I do strategy work and business development work as well as technology. it just gives me an opportunity to do a lot of things. And the really cool thing is that Oracle is one of my clients. So I'm having a portfolio career. It's all about the and. So I'm really excited about that.
And our next question, and I think we're close to coming to the end for our time, is how would you recommend developing more of the soft skills that are valued, such as effective communication, social skills, etc.?
So I would definitely say the organizations that you heard that came together to put this on, volunteer in those various organizations, because I have no doubt that they had to do a lot of collaboration, a lot of meetings. You're getting comfortable with public speaking. You're going into middle schools. I mentioned the Pennsylvania Institute of CPAs. You definitely want to join as a student member, but you want to make sure you're comfortable with a lot of other people and also comfortable with planning and executing an event, like the skill sets that went into planning this event.
All right, hopefully not our last question. What do you think of programming languages such as Python and how they can be applied in the accounting profession? So about learning about that, and what kind of opportunities would learning to code create for somebody working in accounting?
It's interesting because there are accounting firms who have products. And so because they have products, they are actually selling them and other companies are putting their own names on them. So you might not even know. And then there are organizations that develop applications and also develop the solutions that accounting firms use with their clients and business partners. So I would definitely say those low code or development languages would be extremely beneficial. Don't think that you wouldn't put it to good use, because I think you would. And then Python is a different language than the ones I took. I took COBOL, Pascal, and Java. So I didn't take Python, but I did in this COVID environment try to help my son with his Python homework assignments. So I did take a look at it just at a high level, but nowhere near the knowledge that I would need to answer that question in detail.
All right. The best piece of advice for passing the CPA exam is?
I would say take it seriously. You're brilliant. I know you're all smart, but don't do what I did, where I was like, oh, I've got this. And then you don't. Take it seriously. And it's better to take it seriously and get it done than to keep having to take it over and over and over again. And if you do fail it, pick yourself up. Plenty of people have failed it. You would not be the one by yourself. And I'm sure at some point you would pass it.
All right. Working in different companies and technology, what can we focus on as students, more cyber or programming related to what you think is a growing field? Cyber.
And I say that my son is majoring, he's a freshman. And I told him, I said, listen, business, and in particular accounting, so I hope he does it, and cyber are great fields, but usually you have to major in IT, and then you get cyber as a class when you get into advanced classes. But I think cybersecurity, data privacy, and analytics, complemented by your accounting and finance background, is an amazing combination.
Excellent. Well, I don't want to cut off the last question. We have this room until 6:59 and 30 seconds. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our department chair, Dr. Lori Fuller, to close us out for the evening. And just want to say thank you. And with that, turn it to Dr. Fuller.
Well, Kimberly, it has been a pleasure to have you visit our campus and visit our alum and students. So thank you so very much. And to those of you who came tonight and showed up, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. And remember WCU. Go Rams. Good night.
Be sure to link in. I'm sure I didn't get everyone's questions, but please be sure to link in.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Kimberly, so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Oh, no.
Yes, thank you so very, very much.
It was my pleasure. I'm
Have
really
a-
excited about being the incoming president-elect of Beta Alpha Psi. So I'll get to see you probably more, hopefully somewhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely.